What's up, y'all? Happy Sunday. Today we're going to take a look at the Englund Gambit. This is one of my favorite gambits to play, especially in blitz under 1,000 ELO. It starts with the move white pawn to d4. We're going to respond with pawn to e5. White takes. We move our bishop out to c5. White plays pawn to c4 in this particular game. This is not the most common move, but the gambit does still work in this situation. We're going to play pawn to d6. White takes. And now I've moved knight to e7. And for white's perspective, it does look like this was a mistake, especially if black pre-moves it. It's a little bit more convincing. It's really difficult for white to show some restraint and not take this knight. And so in this situation, if they do take it, it's a blunder because the bishop now can move to f2, check, and the king has to take it because our queen is covering d2. So they're forced here, and now the queen is hanging, and we've objectively won the game. So, again, super fun, great one-trick pony to play in blitz. However, what a lot of YouTubers who show you this gambit don't show you is that instead of white playing c4 in this particular situation, a much more common move for white to play where the gambit still works for black is if white plays knight to f3. So if we continue the gambit here, bishop check, king takes, queen takes. Now, the engine actually suggests the best move for white here is knight to c3. However, I personally believe the best move for white here is moving the e-pawn to either the third or the fourth rank. If they do so, this bishop is completely poisoned if black takes it, because if they do here, now at this point, with the pawn moving to e3 or e4, the bishop can now check the black king, and our queen is hanging. And now white not only has equalized, but we are completely losing because we have lost so much material. So be on the lookout for that. You do have to be careful with this gambit also, because if white plays a move in this situation like knight to c3 right away, the gambit no longer works because now the knight covers the white queen if we do take it. So we've really effectively lost a knight and a bishop on our end for nothing but a pawn. Another move instead of knight to c3 for white is moving the e-pawn. And if they move it to the third rank, this blocks the check for the bishop. If they move it to the fourth rank, white simply has an escape square for the king, and they're not required to take the bishop. So definitely look out for that as well. If they do play a move like this, it's not the end of the world. I personally like avoiding Queen's Gambit players, and especially in blitz, but I believe even in rapid games, this is a great opening for black because it just avoids a lot of theory that you may not be familiar with. And a lot of times white is not familiar with all of the theory that goes into this gambit as well, because we can actually move into another gambit called the Solaire Gambit. And that goes with pawn to f6. White takes this. We're going to retake with the knight. And then a lot of times lower level players want to try and pin the knight to your queen. But you can actually just totally ignore this, because if you move knight to e4, a lot of times white is going to believe that you just hung your queen, so they're going to take that. And then bishop to f2 is actually a checkmate. And so this one's a super fun one to play. It's very similar to the Stafford Gambit. I do plan on making a video about that soon. The Stafford Gambit is a little less sound, in my opinion. If they don't fall for it, your position is not great. But a lot of people will take f6 here just because there's no great alternative. They can try to defend the pawn with knight to f3, but this doesn't happen very often. The Solaire Gambit is a little bit more risky, though, because if white figures out your game plan, they can just take your knight with their knight, and now they have a double attack on your bishop and on your queen. And really, the only thing you can do is to retreat your bishop to guard the queen. And if white makes the correct move in capturing your bishop, well, now you're just down 4 points of material. Another variation of the Solaire Gambit is if white never played knight to c3 but instead moved their e-pawn. This will happen a lot of times because white would like to castle more quickly and they want to open up their white squared bishop. And so if you go ahead and move pawn to f6, for some reason people don't like doubled pawns even though this position is not really bad. So they'll go ahead and take your pawn. We recapture with the knight. And then again, if the bishop tries to pin the knight this time, it's not nearly as bad because you can actually go ahead and sack your bishop. Whether or not queen takes is not a big deal. A lot of times they are going to take. Then you can check with the knight this time around, and now you've regained your bishop with theirs. So there's another option if white never played knight to c3. And don't forget, in this position as well, you're also way ahead in development. The king is forced to move here. Their bishop is under attack by two different pieces. Whether or not you think capturing with your queen is a little bit hasty and getting it out too early is up to you. But they can't castle. You're going to be able to castle on the next move. You don't have your f-pawn there to block your rook, so it's already on an open file. You're objectively winning in this situation. So I hope this was helpful. Again, I love playing the Englund Gambit because it avoids the Queen's Gambit theory. The Queen's Gambit is so much slower compared to other openings, and so in a blitz game with something that your opponent might be more familiar with, I like to avoid all that altogether with this gambit. And, sometimes I even end up in objectively better positions. So thanks for sticking around, and we'll see y'all again next time.